That's it.
I can see it. It's recorded. The screens that say recorded. Say recorded the screen.
Yes.
Okay, they can adjust all of this when I get.
I make it.
Okay, what we're going to do is, we're back in Hebrews, we're in VI 5:16, and what I want to do is before we even start, we'll do a little exercise. So you take out a sheet of paper, and those who are taking the course externally by DVD, you need to do the same thing. You got one sheet of paper. And here's what I want you to do. On one side, I want you to list, there's 5 exhortations in the book of Hebrews. I want you to list 1 through 5 without your notes, what the exhortations are, and we've only covered 3 of them, and what chapter each exhortation is in, 1 through 3, all right? Now after you do that, I want you to turn it over, and I want you to draw as much of Dr. Chris's chart as you can, up through the first 5, and see how you do. We'll give you about, how many minutes you need? 30?
Yeah.
You list the five exhortations. I know you weren't given any time to prepare for this, so I just want you to just think for a moment. If you can do those, and if you can draw any of that chart with Dr. Chris. Remember the one that shows Hebrews on top? This one? I'll give you a flash of it so you can see it just for a second. That one? That's what I want you to draw as much as you can. So those who are doing this by DVD need to also be doing the same thing to see how we do with this.
So you want the one that,
Square, right? Without your notes, right?
okay, exactly.
No notes, no nothing, just. Just as best you can. pretty sure it is, I just want to make sure that this, Edmund's operating it for us. I think it should be recorded. Thank you. Okay, we'll stop there. If you can't start, the problem is you can't start drawing it right away, most likely you're not going to be able to do this now. The reason for the exercise, because that's one thing, is one of your requirements. I mean, if you know the drawing, you'll know the exhortation, right? And but the drawing, the reason I want you to be able to do this, so if you ever want to do it on the board, you don't have your both notes with you, your binder with you. If you ever want to teach something from Hebrews, you can put together pretty fast an overview of what Hebrews is about, and give people a summary this way, the doctrinal and the practical. That's what he divides it up between. And as far as consider Jesus our great high priest. So pull this out, let's look at it and see if you have any questions about it, all right? Because right now we're in chapter 7 now. So don't forget chapter 7 through 10, or through a lot of 10, is about, he devotes 3 chapters to the priesthood of Christ. 3. Now let's ask ourselves some questions. Right? As much time as he's devoting to the priesthood, can that tell us anything about the audience? Can we draw any particular conclusions about the audience? How far can we take this without, we can only be, what am I looking for? We can only be, we're not conclusive, it's inconclusive, but imagine if you were a priest and you were in this group of believers he's writing to. And what if you were still, right, going down to the temple when it was your time to serve and you were offering sacrifices? You had no other means of income, right? You had no other job. That was it. There was nothing else. There's nothing else you could do. So what God did was, he just, the unemployment rate went way up in Jerusalem when it came to the clergy, right? When it came to the priest having a job, and it's been that way, of course, when he destroyed the temple in 70 AD. So imagine if you were that priest and you were going down there and said, well, it doesn't really matter anyway, I know it doesn't do anything. Right? But yet you're still doing it. Or if in that community of believers, some of them say, you know what, let's just take a trip down to the temple and watch them do the sacrifices, you know, and see, and just, you know, just look at it and remember and go back and do that. But how deep does a person go into something like that? Was it something that you were into prior to your salvation, some type of religious system that did not portray and present the gospel correctly? But even more so, you were blasphemous. What you were doing in that temple, that's blasphemy. And as we get to chapter 10, we're going to see some very, very strong, the strongest words he uses in chapter 10. So he's building to chapter 10, chapter 11, chapter 12, but he's laying all this foundation about for the priesthood of Christ. Like I said, as much time as he's spending, there has to be more than just a problem with this community of believers, that they need to be instructed about how Christ is the fulfillment of a shadow that was only a shadow that was there. He goes into way too much detail for that to be the only problem. So I'm thinking more and more there were priests involved in this whole thing. And don't forget that Barnabas came from the tribe of Levi, didn't he? But only those, it wasn't just the tribe of Levi to determine if you served the priest or not. You had to be from the seed of Aaron, okay? You had to be from the lineage of Aaron to be a priest. And being that, it guaranteed you, a life of support for the rest of your life. So if that was being done away with, God is ending that. And he didn't say go report the unemployment line to draw unemployment. There was no such thing, right? So maybe some of these guys are just trying to stay connected to the temple system. Thinking, well, what are we really doing wrong if we do that? So, and we believe, and we'll show you, and we'll see it, that absolutely, it's incredibly known as willful sin. If you know something like that is wrong, and you step into it anyway with your eyes wide open, that's called willful sin. Remember, in the Old Testament, there was no sacrifice for willful sin. The sacrifices did not cover that. Only sins of weakness and ignorance and so forth that God provided sacrifices for. So as we think of this audience, and as we go into chapter 7 in much more detail, I know we went through it once, but we're going to start again and come back and use Dr. Weiss's notes and go through his notes and cover it in more detail and all the words. And so we get to 8, 9, and 10, our foundation will be much stronger from this chapter. Pastor Shamer set a note there again on chapter page 80.
I got them already.
And throw your page 80, your 77 one away and your other binder in the binder and just use those. Okay. I know you already have you have the software, but
yes, sir.
But you still. So, open your Bibles to chapter 7 of Hebrews. Let's read through it. I'll make some comments. Then we'll go to tab 3 for Dr. Weiss's notes. We're going to go through those notes tonight, and hopefully we'll get through chapter 7, and there will be a much stronger foundation as we try to understand why on earth he had to spend so much time discussing this and teaching this. And make sure if you have any questions, you bring them up as we move through this. So we'll do a quick pass through chapter 7, then we'll turn to chapter 3, and tab through your binder, and we will pick up there. Okay, chapter 7. Just read the end of chapter 6, verse 13, to get the intro to chapter 7. Okay? Chapter 6, verse 13. For when God made a promise to Abraham, because he could swear by no one greater, he swore by himself, saying, surely, blessing I will bless you, and multiplying I will multiply you. And so after he had patiently endured, he obtained the promise. For men indeed swear by the greater, and an oath for confirmation is for them, and the end of all dispute. Thus God determined to show more abundantly to the heirs of promise the immutability of his counsel, confirmed it by an oath. In other words, God is an unchanging person, an unchanging promise. It cannot be changed. That's why I cannot get over the argument that people try to make about Israel when God promised the land to Abraham. It was him he made the promise to, and his offspring. They say, well, they believe the churches of New Israel. No, even at that, the promise is made to who? To Abraham. And his offspring, forever and forever. So, they say, well, the spiritual seed of Abraham are all believers. Okay, I agree with that. But the promise was still made to Abraham. It's called the Abrahamic covenant. And you can't get beyond that unless you do a lot of with scripture of turning, like I said, the church of the New Israel or we're all forensic Jews in Christ. And so he inherits all things, which he does. He's heir of all things, right? But in him, so if we're in him, then we inherit the promises made to Abraham and Israel. No. No, no, no. So he swore then to Abraham that by two immutable things, in which it is impossible for God to lie, we might have strong consolation who have fled for refuge, lay hold of the hope set before us. This hope we have is an anchor of the soul, both sure and steadfast, which enters the presence behind the veil. We said here we have the tabernacle, right? And behind the veil, the Holy of Holies, that Christ himself. Not only is he the priest, he's the sacrifice and the altar. He's all of that. He's everything. All you can really say about the shadows is, it was like Dr. Weiss says, it's like your index finger, right? Pointing towards the reality. All that ceremonial system is what that was. And he's trying to get them beyond that. So I'm trying to figure out, I said, Lord, why is it he's taking all this time to try to get them beyond, to leave that system and walk away from it? I said to my wife, I said, you know what? Paul said in 1 Corinthians that, or actually I think 2 Corinthians, one of his fears, the biggest fear was that the Corinthian church would lose the simplicity of their period of devotion to Christ, or they would leave the simple Christian life. And what we have done, and what they did, what we have done is we've complicated it, not because theologically it's so complicated, that is part of it, but because we have taken the temporal and put such a high value on it that we try to hold on with one hand to the temporal and one hand to the eternal. And therefore, doing that and being caught in between those, we complicate things because we're always what? Trying to figure out or trying to think, am I back and forth, when God says let go of the temporal and grab hold to eternal. Imagine if the entire church, your church, did that. I don't know what that looks like. Right? But if you think about, and that's what the temple was. I mean, that's what the tabernacle was and the temple was. It was temporary. Jesus' temple, the tabernacle in which he served, is eternal. Okay? It's in heaven. And that which is on earth was only a temporary, and put in place temporarily as an index finger to point towards Jesus. So, when you and I then, the application, is what would happen if we let go of that which is temporal? If we didn't place such a high value on the temporal things of this life. And you have to decide, through the scriptures, through the Lord, what is temporary and what is eternal. And how and why and can I let go of that which is temporal? That's what they didn't want to do. And guess what? We think they were attached, we're just as attached to our temporal things. Our temporal way, the way of life, That's temporary. No matter how much work we put into some things, unless they are invested in the eternal, they're just temporary. The hope we have as anchor of the soul, both sure and steadfast, chapter 6, verse 19, and which enters the presence behind the veil. Where the forerunner, right, that's Lord Jesus, has entered for us, even Jesus, having become high priest, forever, according to the order of Melchizedek. And I think when he said that they just went, what on earth? What is he talking about? What is he doing? What is he trying to say? And this may not be the first time he's taken them through this exercise, right? I mean, you only have to take your people you teach one time through everything, right? One time and they got it. One time it's a done deal. Well, imagine how entrenched in their lives this was for them too. So, chapter 7 says, for this Melchizedek, king of Salem, he's going to do an historical argument here, what he's going to talk about. Priest of the Most High God, who met Abraham returning from the slaughter of the kings, and went to the kings of the east, and blessed him. In other words, Melchizedek met Abraham coming back when he went and got Lot back, because Lot got himself kidnapped, and the kings of the east went and kidnapped him and kept him, and Abraham said, you know, you really shouldn't mess with my nephew. So he just put a small army together and went up and beat all those three kings and their battle and their warrior, their soldiers and their armies, and brought all these spoils back. And on his way back, somebody met him, Melchizedek, and blessed him.
Amen.
To whom also Abraham gave what? A tenth part of all. First being translated king of righteousness, then also king of Salem, meaning king of peace. From Jerusalem, right? Without father, without mother, without genealogy, having neither beginning of days nor end of life as far as recorded, right? There's no record of that. He's only mentioned a few short verses in the Old Testament, and he's also is prophesied about the Messiah in Psalm 110 that he would be a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. So they should know this. They should know that the Messiah was going to be a priest. But they probably couldn't possibly figure out, well, is he going to be a Levitical priest? What's he going to be, right? Neither beginning of days nor end of life, made like the Son of God, remains a priest continually. Made like him how? He's in the likeness, meaning what? Jesus is eternal. He has no beginning, he has no end. Right? Melchizedek had no genealogy recorded. That's all he's saying. Now we can't take his argument too far and try to make Melchizedek out to be something he's not. Right now he's simply a tool for this man or this person to argue, make his argument historically and doctrinally about Jesus had become a priest. Messiah had become a priest in order to bring about the new covenant, the New Testament. That's what he's going to do. Remains a priest continually. In other words, Melchizedek, he's still a priest today, in the sense that we have no record what? Of his death. We don't. So his argument, we've got to understand how he's saying it and why he's saying it. Now consider how great this man was, to whom even the patriarch Abraham gave a tenth of the spoils. And indeed, those who are the sons of Levi, who receive the priesthood, have a commandment to receive tithes from the people according to the law. That is, from their brethren, though they have come from the loins of Abraham. In other words, he's taken them all the way back to who? To Abraham. And said, guess what? They were in Abraham when Abraham paid tithes to Melchizedek. Just like we were in who? Adam, when Adam sinned. But whose genealogy is not derived from them received tithes from Abraham and blessed him who had the promises. Okay, here's the guy. There was no such thing as the Hebrew when Melchizedek was walking around. Right? There was no such thing as a Levite when he was walking around. He was priest. But yet Abraham, who is the father of those of faith, the spiritual father, the forefather, we should say, even of all of us, right? Even Gentiles. But whose genealogy is not derived from them received tithes from Abraham and blessed him who what? Who had the promise. In other words, Abraham was the man. He was the man in the Old Testament that God made the covenant with. The Abrahamic covenant. The promises all come through him. Genesis chapter 12. All the promises come through Abraham. He's going to say now, look, you're going to see that your high priest now, Jesus didn't come through the Levitical priesthood, right? The Levites. He came from the tribe of who? Judah. So, guess what? There was a priest long before the Levites. His name was Melchizedek. He was not a Levite. So, this temporary thing that God put together was simply that, temporary. Just like spiritual gifts, right? We're not going to need those in heaven. Things endures is faith, hope, and love. Spiritual gifts are not going to be necessary. Are they temporary then? So they're temporary, right? Now, beyond all contradiction, the lesser, right, is blessed by the better. In other words, Abraham is blessed by who? Melchizedek. Why is that important? He was a priest long before the Levites were around, and guess what? He blessed Abraham, who all the Levitical priests were still in. Right? They were already still in Abraham when Melchizedek blessed them. So the new order of priest is nothing, it's not something that should surprise you that God would do that. Right? Here mortal men receive tithes, but there he receives them whom it is written, witness that he lived. In other words, there's no genealogy, there's no record of the death of Melchizedek. Even Levi, who receives tithes, paid tithes to Abraham, so to speak. In other words, his argument is one like you would make in the pulpit. Right? Or your Sunday school class, or wherever you're ministering at, his argument is something you would make a logical, rational argument. For he was still in the loins of his father when Melchizedek met him. So here's a historical argument about Melchizedek and about Abraham and the blessing and so forth. Now he goes to the doctrinal argument. Why is there a need then for a new priesthood, right? Why is there a need that we have a new high priest? Verse 11, chapter 7. Therefore, if perfection or completion, use the word completion, right? Therefore, if perfection or completion were through the Levitical priesthood, for under it the people received the law, what further need was there for another priest to rise according to the order of Melchizedek, and not be called according to the order of Abraham? In other words, if they were made complete, or if it was a perfect system, there'd be no other need for another, would there be? There'd be no need for it. For the priesthood being changed of necessity, there is also a change to the law. What law is he talking about? The principle of the priesthood coming through the order of Levi. That's the law he's talking about. The law of the priesthood, which means that every priest had to come through the lineage of Aaron, the brother of Moses. So if the priesthood is changed, then the law is changed, meaning the priesthood can come someplace else. According to what? Melchizedek. For he, Jesus, of whom these things are spoken, belongs to another tribe for which no man has officiated the altar. I mean, he was from the tribe of Judah. So there was no what? Nobody ever from the tribe of Judah went to the altar. Jesus never went to the temple or to the Holy of Holies or any of those places when he was on this earth. He obeyed what? The law. He never went through that we have a record of. For it is evident that our Lord arose from Judah, of which tribe Moses spoke nothing concerning priesthood. It is yet far more evident if in the likeness of Melchizedek there arises another priest who has come not according to the law of the fleshly commandment. In other words, the law that made the Levites, that God said that the Levites would be the priesthood. But according to the power of an endless life. In other words, what qualifies this new priesthood is you must have an endless life. That's the qualifier. So did Melchizedek have that? Except he's arguing that because there's no record of his birth or death, right? He's arguing that principle. Said, okay, there's a principle here that if Melchizedek never died, there's no, his life is endless. So that means an endless life is the qualifier for a new priesthood. That's the law. The new law is an endless life. Not the tribe, it's an endless life. Okay? For he testifies, you are a priest forever according to the word of who? Melchizedek, that's Psalm 110. And the psalmist said that the Messiah, which is the Messianic, one of the main Messianic Psalms in the Old Testament, said that the Messiah would be a priest forever according to the order of who? Which is an endless life. No beginning, no end. The law is the law of the endless life. For on one hand, there is the annulment of the first former commandment because of its weakness and unprofitableness. In other words, the law made nothing what? Perfect. It couldn't. Because the priests had to offer sacrifice over and over and over for themselves, and also they died. Right? On the other hand, there's the bringing in of a better hope through which we draw near to God. In other words, the qualifier of an endless life, of which Jesus qualifies for, like Melchizedek. And inasmuch as he was not made priest without an oath. In other words, the Levitical priesthood was not made priesthood by an oath, were they? By a simple law that God put in place. The law was only the tribes of the Levites after the lineage of Aaron would serve in the tabernacle. No one else. So now that law is being thrown away, thrown out the door. And say the new law is a qualifier of the endless life and the sacrifice. Right? And here he's saying that the Levites were not made priests according to an oath. For they have become priests without an oath, the Levites, but Jesus with an oath by him who said to him, his Father, God the Father, the Lord has sworn, will not relent, you are a priest forever according to the order of Melchizedek. In other words, of an endless life. By so much more, Jesus has become a surety of a better what? Covenant. In other words, if he is now the new priest, and they ministered under what? The old covenant. Now, a new priesthood means what? A new covenant must be put in place. A new covenant must be put in place to replace the old covenant. You say, well, that's simple enough. Not to these guys. Right? And let me tell you something. You guys have studied the Word of God a long time. So if you think it's simple what you're preaching and teaching to your congregation, and you think they're getting it all?
No.
You've been immersed in the Scriptures for how many years? And guess what? I don't know what percentage of congregations have even read the entire Bible, or if they've ever memorized 10 verses. You don't know.
It's true.
So what they know is what the preacher said,
Right.
or ministers have said, and so therefore, their biblical literacy is very much questionable. So it's not as simple as one would say. Also, there were many priests because they were prevented by death from continuing. But he, Jesus, because he continues forever, has an unchangeable priesthood. So, first of all, the person of Christ cannot change. Right? And the priesthood of Christ cannot change. And the practical life of Christ cannot change. Nothing can change. Nothing.
So, what do you recommend? What do you recommend? Because you're right. The more you learn, the deeper you go. But if your audience or your congregation is still like baby, in a sense, because here I do know that Sunday school and Bible study is fewer in numbers. You may have a congregation of 200, but you may have 35 to 40 to participate in a deeper study.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes it hard.
Very much difficult, yes. There has to be somehow generated a thirst for the Scriptures, and only the Holy Spirit can do that. Now, here's the danger in congregations.
Mm-hmm.
We've put up on the screen the faith, the rest, life, and He has commanded that everybody pursue that. God has commanded everybody pursue this life. What if they don't? What if He puts them under wilderness discipline? Like when Isaiah was preaching and no one what? He didn't convert one person.
Mm. Wow.
So, and I'm being very careful how I say this. Just like there's individuals under discipline of God, there are churches also under His discipline. Because they are not pursuing this life. And they're substituting some sort of temporary, whatever, lifestyle of going to church, doing this, doing that, and the other, and doing those practices as if that is, which is temporary, right? That's going to go away. But the end result of this life doesn't go away. The end result of maturity and glorifying God, the end result of honor, doesn't go away. God is very serious. We're going to see in chapter 10. He's very, very serious about people pursuing this life. If they are not pursuing this life, they're in direct disobedience to God. And subject themselves to discipline. And guess what? Pastors and teachers who are not teaching and preaching the faith, rest, life, or something, whatever terminology you want to put on it, if they're not preaching that and teaching that, guess what? They're subjecting themselves to some very serious discipline from God. If they're preaching and teaching, the people won't comply, well, he can't take them, or she can't tell, they can't take them and what? Force them. But that don't mean you shouldn't be teaching and preaching as hard as you can. I would start teaching my congregation, if I right now, if it was me, one of the things I would do, a vocabulary. I would teach them a word or something every week. Bill O'Reilly does it every night.
Wow, that's deep.
Imagine if you taught them one biblical vocabulary word a week and what it means. You're teaching them the scriptures, you're just not doing it the way,
You feel them.
right, in other words, if you gave them, one word a week, one word a week, one word a week, and defined it and said, guess what? We'll come back next week, we're gonna review this word. I'm gonna give you 4 words a month, at the end of the month, we'll review all 4 words again. Because we're all like sheep, and we don't retain, we just don't. And if they're not practicing those things, you're being faithful and teach them what the Bible teaches. Then you might elevate it to teach them 2 words a week. Then 3 words. Before you know it, you're teaching them a verse a week. But you got to do it, and you have to start it out and do it gradually to the point if they start getting it. And what you do is you cultivate the soil. With God doing it, you're cultivating the soil to make them receptive to the scriptures.
Amen.
Because they're only listed 10%, 7% of the time anyway, retaining that. In other words, if you preach an hour sermon, they're going to retain maybe 7 minutes of it for a little while.
Wow.
Now, how important is redundancy? That's why expository teaching, verse by verse, and coming back and going over. Coming back and going over. Because we, me, you, everybody has the same problem. The temporary gets in immediately, as before we walk out that door, the temporary is already the priority. Already. Could be a phone call, text message, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
The temporary, come let my dog out, I gotta go to the beach. Right? Your kid, whoever. So the thing is that's, you gotta start out with them, teaching them like babies, right? Spoon feeding them till you get them to the place where they can handle what you're teaching and preaching. And it's not too late to start. Your congregation may be further than that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Oh, they can tell you what the Baptists practice. Well, see, they can tell you what the Baptists actually believe and why. Whoever, whatever denomination, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, he gave us the historical argument, the doctrinal argument. Now he goes to this practical argument that the practical side of things doesn't change. But he, Jesus, because he continues forever, hasn't changed with priesthood. Therefore, he also is able to save to the what? Uttermost, those who come to God through him, since he always lives to make intercession for them. He's qualified because he has endless life. So therefore, he can save you and I and everybody else, what? To the uttermost. Every day, every hour, every minute, every second, every day, he saves us. We're saved. And keeps us that way.
Mm-hmm.
Because his sacrifice was what? He covers your sin, and here's the thing. I gotta be careful again, I'll say some things. Your sins, past, present, and future, my sin, were all covered under the blood of Christ when he died on that cross. Your sin will never, never keep you out of heaven. But it will definitely be dealt with here on this earth. God will deal with your sin on this earth. We're going to see that in chapter 12. While we're still here, he will deal with our sin. He will discipline us one way or the other. People don't even know it's God. They don't know. They just think they're having a bad day. Look what he did to Jacob. I won't let you go till you bless me. He said, okay. All night long, he wrestled with Jacob, and then finally, what, touched his hip. He walked with a limp the rest of his life. Humbled him to some degree, but God disciplined him. For such a high priest was fitting for us, who is holy Look how he describes Jesus. Compared to what? The Levitical priest. Remember, the law of the priesthood is changed forever. No more, no more, no more Levitical priests. Period. And if these guys are messing around with those priests in that temple, and they're going back there and they're playing games, guess what? God is going to deal with them. He's going to tell them that. God is going to deal with you. If you don't stop what you're doing, or if you start going back to that temple, God will deal with you very seriously. What does God deal with us for? Going back to whatever's temporary. Or staying in it. Undefiled, separated from sinners, and has become higher than the heavens. How much more could he say? He said, Philippians chapter 2, right? 5, verse 8. His name is above every name, on those on earth and those in heaven. He's the Almighty, who is, who was, and is to come. His name is Almighty.
Okay.
That's what his name is. Who does not need David as those high priests to offer up sacrifices. And so he's referring directly what? As those high priests. They're still doing what they're doing. They're still offering sacrifices. Offer up sacrifices, first for his own sins and then for the people's. For this he did once for all when he offered up himself. Whereas he himself was the priest, the altar, the sacrifice. The mercy seat. He's everything. When they go in, they pour blood on them, sprinkle blood on the mercy seat where the cherubims was. Inside of there was the manna, the tablets of stone, and the Aaron's rod that budded, which means that God can bring life out of death. A dead limb, and God says, I can bring life out of death. Boy, Abraham and Sarah, right? Jesus, God brought life out of a dead corpse in that tomb. An endless life. And someday, he will give us an endless life. When he resurrects us, if we die before the rapture, he will resurrect us and impart to us an endless life, which qualifies to serve with Christ in heaven and on this earth, for whatever reason he wants us to do. The endless, righteous life is the qualifier. For the law appoints as high priests men who have weakness, but the word of the oath which came after the law appoints the Son, who has been perfected forever, meaning that the perfection, the completeness of what he did can never, ever, ever be changed or altered. Never, ever, no, not ever. People need to know who Jesus is and how he ministers on our behalf. So let's turn to tab 3 of your binders. If you're watching my DVD, we're going to go to page 72, which starts with chapter 7 of Dr. Weiss's notes. We've already covered Dr. Warren Worsby notes, but look at Dr. Weiss because he goes into a lot of detail. Now, here's what I want you to realize as we go through this. Is that he's talking to a group of people, for whatever reason, will not let go. Or have not let go of the temple, of the truth, of what's true and real. So, you and I need to remember that, okay, as we preach and teach. All right, got your notes, page 72, tab 3, right? Chapter 7. His outline continues on. The high priest after the order of Melchizedek, verses 1 through 3, chapter 7. Melchizedek, a sinner saved by grace, has no recorded parents, no recorded date of birth or of death. And he was a Gentile. Abraham paid tithes to a Gentile. He was the first Hebrew, but the first Hebrew was Isaac, wasn't it? But Abraham was a Gentile long before he became a Hebrew, which we believe is after, I think, his father, grandfather's name, Eber, I believe, is where they got the word Hebrew from. A type, therefore, of Messiah in his eternal priesthood. And that's simply the simple argument that we think, and rephrase it, we look at that as a simple argument, but these guys is profound. All right? The brief history of Melchizedek is given in Genesis 14, 18 through 20. 2 verses. Right? Just a short, brief history. And I bet he never knew that he was a picture or a type of the Messiah. So we don't know what God is using us for right now. But I guarantee you, if we're pursuing this faith rest life, He is using us in ways we don't even know He's doing. When Abraham came to Salem, he found a Gentile priest of God ministering to believers in that city. Now, Weiss concludes that if he was a priest, he must have been ministering to somebody, right? If they were believers, guess what they were? Gentiles. The Gentiles were here before the Jews were. That's why it shouldn't surprise them that God made the church out of what? Both Jews and Gentiles. But it did. Translation. For this Melchizedek, king of Salem, priest of God the Most High, who met Abraham, returned from the slaughter of the kings, and blessed him. Verse 2. The word gave is the translation of orizo, which means to separate into parts, to distribute. And divided Melchizedek a 10th part of the spoils of battle, Abraham acknowledged Melchizedek as a priest. And a king, I should say. The start and conclusion based upon this fact is stated in verses 4 through 10. The word first refers to the first designation which with reference to this mysterious individual. The name Melchizedek, which is the first designation which the writer uses, means king of righteousness. Then follows the designation king of Salem, which means king of peace. The latter comes from his character, as the first came from his name. The ancient name of Jerusalem was Jebus. When Melchizedek was the king and priest of the city, it was called Salem. This means peace. Salim. Translation. To whom also Abraham divided 10th of part of all. The first designation on the one hand being interpreted means king of righteousness, and then on the other hand, he was king of what? Salem, which is king of peace. Verse 3, the words without father, without mother, without descent, speak of the fact that there is no record of his parentage. This is significant for it indicates a different type of priesthood from Levitical, in which a person's genealogy was of first importance. In Israel, no man was allowed to exercise priestly functions unless he belonged to the family of Aaron. Genealogy is still very important to them. It's kind of important to us, even as Gentiles, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
We want to check out our genealogy to see where we came from. I'm not so sure I want to do that. The words having neither beginning of days or an end of life refer to the fact that the historical record is silent regarding his birth and death. Melchizedek was made like the Son of God, likened to the Son of God, aphomoio, to produce a facsimile, in the sense that his history was so written up that it appeared to have no father and mother and no end of days. As Westcott says, the resemblance lies in the biblical representation and not primarily in Melchizedek himself. Okay? Because Melchizedek wasn't perfect, was he? It's the representation, it's the picture, it's the facsimile, it's that, a type. One could not have a type that was in itself eternal, for then one would have what? The reality, not the type. So Melchizedek wasn't eternal. He was only a man, a sinner like everybody else. No end of days just means there's no record of his death. Thus, an accommodative type, so to speak, must be used. So he uses Melchizedek to accommodate his purpose, just like we use illustrations for the same reason, don't we?
Okay, I have a question. So is it that it was just no record?
That's all.
That's all that meant? Okay. I've always wondered about that.
It's just no record, that's it.
Just
It
no.
wasn't Jesus, he was a sinner.
Okay.
And those who want to say that Melchizedek was was a picture, was a,
Yeah, a shadow and
Christopher.
Christopher.
yeah.
No. No. He's just saying he fits his example he's trying to make here. And he ties it back into Psalm 110, which is very, very important. Back in the scriptures. Remember, the Holy Spirit can do a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
The Old Testament is new. You and I can't. Right? He can take and snatch a verse out and use it, right, in somewhere in a different context. You and I can't do that.
So he actually was not a theophany?
No.
All this time I thought he was teaching.
He just fit the writer's what? Illustration. And also scripture. It is important to note that the likeness of Melchizedek is not to Messiah as son of man, but to him as son of God. As son of man he was born and died. As son of God neither could that be said of him. The words abideth a priest continue are not to be construed with made like unto the Son of God. The latter clause refers to what has preceded. It is not here likeness with respect to priesthood that is asserted, but likeness with respect to what? Duration. It's likeness, nothing more. A being which is asserted. In view of the fact there is no record of the death of Melchizedek, it is assumed that he is still alive, and therefore still a high priest. That's the argument the guy is using. Thus, a fitting type of the eternal being of the Messiah as a high priest. That's all it is, to illustrate that Christ is eternally the qualifier, going to be a priest forever. Was, and the Levitical priest, guess what? There was no oath made to them. It was going to last forever. But they thought it would, didn't they? Translation: fatherless, motherless, having no genealogy, having no beginning of days, nor termination of life, but likened in these respects, the Son of God remains a priest continually. Letter I, high priest is a spirit and a superior order of priesthood, verse 4 through 10. The Aaronic priest received tithes. The writer now proceeds to show that Melchizedek was better than who? Boy, what a risk he's taking right there. It's like you taking the pastor of your church that's been there for 30 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And use him an illustration of a sinner of some type. There's certain things you don't touch. You better be, you're mindful there, right? There's certain things. If the pews have names on the back, one place on the back of them, just leave it alone. People get set in things. We got in trouble one time for moving the Lord's Supper table from one side of the foyer to the other. Somebody donated that table.
Oh, yes.
You don't move nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I tell you, one of the best things that happened to our church is it burned to the ground. We
Wow.
got rid of all that stuff.
So you start new.
You start fresh.
Look at all these churches that are putting in theater seats.
Mm-hmm.
Those pews ain't forever after order of anything. They're wood.
Yeah, we don't have
Probably some pretty good wood.
You don't
Still
have
wood.
pews.
Oh, seats, chairs.
We have chairs.
This is my daddy's church. He started this church. He built this church. Is it
We
really?
changed everything out.
Shows that Melchizedek was better than Abraham in order that he might show that he was better than Levi and thus better than Aaron. In other words, he had to start with the biggest guy in the Old Testament. Father Abraham. He had to start with him. Guess who else used Abraham? Jesus. John, what, chapter 8? He said, Abraham, he said, we're the seed of Abraham. He said, I know, you know. Then he went on down and said that Abraham longed to see his day and rejoiced. He said, you're not yet 50 years old. You know Abraham? He said, yeah. Before Abraham was, I am. Saying I was that burning bush a long, long time ago. It follows, therefore, that if Melchizedek is superior to Aaron, his priesthood must be what? Better than that of Aaron. Since that is the case, Messiah's priesthood, being in the order of the priesthood of Melchizedek, must be better. That makes Messiah better than Aaron, and therefore the New Testament he instituted better than what? The First Testament, which Aaron is instrumental in bringing in with his brother Moses. And that is the argument of the book of Hebrews, namely that the New Testament in Jesus' blood is superior to and takes the place of the First Testament in animal blood. The Old is done away with. So now if you're trying to teach people about the Old Testament, guess what? You want to take principles in the Old Testament? Go right ahead. If they're eternal principles. Do not try to put people under the law of the Old Testament. First of all, it's wrong to do that. And second, there's no way they can do it in the first place. Get people to think they're better than somebody else because they can have a better moral constitution. Right? The word consider is theorio in the Greek text. It is not used. It is used not of an indifferent spectator. In other words, he's going to say that this is a very important word here that he's using. In other words, it's not like a spectator would consider, but one, or to be testing it. He said, but one who looks at the things with interest and attention. Theorio would be used of a generally official reviewing or inspecting an army. Right? As against theomai, which would be used of a lay spectator viewing the parade. It speaks of a critical, discriminating inspection. Now consider how great this man was, to whom even the patriarch Abraham gave a tenth of the spoils. Well, consider, he says, means you give it an inspection like a general army would. Look into it, look into it. He's saying, look, 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 and see. So he comes right back in chapter 8, chapter 9, chapter 10, comes right back to pull everything back in again. The word spoils in the Greek text is interesting. It is acrothenion, made up of akron, the topmost point. I love this. Listen. The topmost point, and this is made up of the word akron and this, a heap. It was a 10th part of the top of the pile, or the pick of the spoil, which Abraham gave Melchizedek. The Greeks, after victory, gathered up the spoils in a heap, and the top or best part of the heap was presented to who? The gods. The fact that Abraham gave a tenth of the pick of the spoils of Melchizedek magnifies the latter's greatness, Melchizedek, in the eyes of the readers of this letter. But it was not any ordinary man called Abraham who paid tithes to Melchizedek. It was Abraham the patriarch. The writer is careful to identify him, lest his Jewish readers think it might be some other man of the same name. The word patriarch is a transliteration of the Greek word patriarches. Patri means father, and arches means first. Thus Abraham is their first father. He is the progenitor of the Hebrew race, and yet Melchizedek is greater than he. So, if you were sitting there listening, you were being drawn back to the temple, or you had started to mess around, going, even maybe carrying a turtle dove or two over there. What if you were doing that? translation. Now give careful consideration, on top of page 74, to how great this man was, to whom a tenth of the part Abraham gave of the pick of the spoils, the patriarch. He gave him the pick of, it's like having some great dogs and giving somebody the pick of the litter, right? The choice one. He gave him the best spoils he could have gotten to Melchizedek. Verse 5, the words they are of sons of Levi who receive the office of the priesthood are in the Greek text those out of the sons of Levi who receive the office of the priest. There should not be a comma after Levi in the authorized version. The point is that not all the sons of Levi became priests, but only those who what? Belonged to the family of Aaron. These were given a special injunction to take tithes of their brethren, even though the latter, like them, were descended from a common ancestor, Abraham. They still wanted them tithes. Right? The priests still wanted them. And what if they were priests in the group? What if he's writing to a group of priests that become believers? Because whoever he's talking to had money to be plundered and money to help others. We'll see that as we get a little bit further. Oh, we saw that chapter 6, right? They had money that so they're not poor. They were poor now, but they're not poor to start out with, right? Which makes it sound like they lost connections, money, everything. The significance of this act of tithing is seen when we want to understand that the Aaronic priesthood took tithes of their brethren by legal appointment only. When they paid tithes in this way, there was no acknowledgement of inferiority on the part of those who paid tithes. Or they weren't even, there was no acknowledgement, they were even less value or important than the priest. But yet the priest became what? What is it like in the church today? It was never meant to be that way.
Really?
You can argue all you want from certain texts and scriptures. It was never meant for there to be that space, that type of gap. Yes, there's leadership in the church, but you obey them as you obey the Word of God and teach.
That's true.
That's the obedience part of it. Right?
Oh, God.
Yeah, because the leaders in our church, we're called servants.
They're called servants. Good, that's what we are, right?
Right.
But I'm saying, so it was never meant for there to be such a...
Servant leaders.
Anyway.
Because they holler, they boo. I mean, they put on an act when the preacher come out. In certain churches. I just be looking. I be lost. It's like I mean, because I know that God don't want you to look upon no human like that, you know.
You don't preach down to people. You lift people up when you preach and teach them.
Right.
You bring them up.
I like that too.
It was mere compliance to the law. But in the case of Abraham, there was no law that required him to pay tithes to Melchizedek. Of course, the law to pay tithes to Levites, yeah. But maybe, what was the law for Abraham to pay? It was not. When he paid the latter tithes, it was an acknowledgement on his part of his inferiority and a personal tribute to his greatness and superiority. Whereas the Levites weren't superior or greater than who? The ordinary Jew. But in this case, Abraham said there was no law that required him. So just the act alone said that he elevated Melchizedek to a place that said, I'm inferior to him. And that's a tribute to also the man called Abraham. Don't forget, when him and Lot had an argument, what did he do? He said, Lot, I tell you what, you take whatever you want.
take what you want. I'll take the whatever
That was
you
Abraham.
want. That's right.
Because he believed God
That's right.
and knew he was at a better city coming than that land. As much as it's valued, Abraham said, you know what? There's a place
His
far
faith.
off that I'm going to
Mhm.
see someday. Translation, in those days, and in those of the sons of Levi who received the office of priest, have a commandment to take tithes of the people according to the law. And this from their brethren, even though they are come out of the loins of Abraham. Melchizedek received tithes from Abraham, therefore was better than he. Verse 6, the words, but he whose descent is not counted from them, are in the Greek text literally, but who is not what? Genealogically derived from them. Speaking here of Melchizedek, the latter who had no part of the Levitical genealogy or economy, and because of that no legal right to exact tithes from Abraham, took tithes from the patriarch himself. The voluntary gift of Abraham implied a recognition on the part of the latter of the personal security of the former. Did Melchizedek accept the exalted position Abraham accorded him and gave the patriarch his blessing? Abraham, who had received the divine promises and blessings, might be supposed to have been above being blessed by any man. But not so. Was he above being blessed by someone else? It's like a pastor thinks he's above being blessed by. They're just the blessers, some of them, aren't they? Who can bless them? Something to think about
It is.
when it comes to humility. That people can speak a blessing and pray a blessing over the pastor and over the elders and the deacons and whoever. You don't want to forget that all of us are sheep, including them.
Amen.
As much as we are to honor and respect all of them, yes, absolutely. We must not forget we all come out of the same humanity.
And Jesus said, I did not come to be served, but I come to serve. And that always comes to the back of my mind, is that, I don't want someone to serve me. I'm humble enough that I want to be able to serve somebody.
But you must allow yourself to be served.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Now, Peter had that problem.
Mhm.
Jesus going to wash his feet. He said,
Oh,
Yeah.
not mine, no.
Jesus rebuked him again. Now,
Right.
he rebuked Peter a few times, and Peter turned out to be one of the best shepherds you can imagine. Just read his letters. But he had to learn some lessons, didn't he? All of us do. I don't care who we are, what level we are, as far as in the ministry or how many degrees we have. It's not the issue.
It's not the issue. I just think of the humility, that if you can get that key in your mind, you can be humble enough to accept when somebody wants to serve you. But then on the other hand, you don't be so high and mighty that you can't humble yourself to serve somebody else.
Well, we used to have foot washing services, didn't we?
Mm. Yeah, we did too.
Those
Yeah. I've been one of them a long
Yeah,
time.
since grandmama days.
Well, our bishops, when they are consecrated, they have the foot washing service before the consecration.
Translation, but who was not genealogically derived from them received tithes of Abraham, and the one who has the promises, he blessed. In other words, Melchizedek blessed Abraham. Verse 7, the word translated contradiction is antalogia, which means literally a word spoken against, and thus it comes to mean a dispute. The writer says such a universally held truth that the inferior is blessed by the superior leaves no room for dispute about the matter. The words less and better are in the neuter gender in the Greek text, expressed in its widest form of the principle stated above. This principle applies where the blessing carries with it not only the verbal expression of goodwill, but also goodwill achieving actual results. In other words, the blessing meant something. The blessing of Melchizedek carried with it results. Page 75. Chapter 3, page 75. Translation, but apart from every dispute, the less is blessed by who? By the better, the less by the better is blessed. Melchizedek is type still receiving in type only now, as his little bit of an argument here in the teachers chapter. Remember, he's only an illustration. That's all he is in this whole thing. But we are not careful, we'll elevate Melchizedek to some position he wasn't in.
Mm-hmm.
I'm explaining how a lot of times.
Whereas the Aaronic priest died. Verse 8, the word here, Odeh, means according to the biblical law, which was still being observed, though unlawfully by Israel, whereas God had fulfilled, completed all the sacrifices. There, Ekai means in the passage in Genesis where Melchizedek is recorded to have been receiving tithes. The word do not refer to any specific places. In the expression men that die receive tithes, the word die is a participle describing men. The emphasis is upon the fact that dying men receive tithes. The Levites are dying men who pass off the scene in due time and are succeeded by others. The record concerning Melchizedek does not mention his death. Thus the record testifies in that way to the fact he's still alive. Only as an illustration, doesn't it? How many years you got to wait if somebody dies and they can't find the body to collect an insurance policy or anything else before the person is declared legally dead? It used to be 7 years.
I think it was
7. Yeah, that's 7.
Because
Try to get a death certificate, right? To prove they actually are dead. Thus, his office as priest does not pass on to another. He is still receiving tithes, meaning illustratively. Translation, here on the other one hand, dying men are receiving tithes, but there receives them concerning whom the testimony is that he lives. In other words, men who are dying, right? The priests were dying off. They received tithes, but here, Melchizedek, then really, there's no record of his death. It carries on. Aaron and Abraham paid tithes to Melchizedek, therefore the latter is superior. Therefore Messiah is better than Aaron, being a priest in the order of Melchizedek. Who argues this way? Who takes the argument and drills it down this far? We think he's being simplistic, but he's not. He drills it down to the place where they have no comeback. That's how you've got to preach. That's how good you've got to preach, that there's no argument against the principles you are presenting. Or somebody will say to you something off the wall that might get under your skin. Verses 9 and 10. The words, as I may say so, are really so speak a word. The words he's saying, it's like you said, well, let me just say this way, right? That's what he's saying. Let me just say something. That's how he's saying it. The expression is an unusual statement, one that may appear paradoxical, or startling to the reader. The expression indicates that what is to be said is not to be taken as what? In strictness. It is used when anything is about to be said that is unexpected or somewhat strained, not likely to be universally recognized, at least in the general way in which it is asserted. It is sometimes used for roughly or improperly, right? Here's the key. The tendency in Jewish theology was to view heredity in this realistic manner. Levi was the ones of Abraham, and that he was descended from him. When Abraham paid tithes to Melchizedek, Levi paid them tithes. Thus Melchizedek was superior to Levi. That means he was better than Aaron. It follows since Melchizedek is better than Aaron, Messiah is better than Aaron, for he belongs to a superior order of priesthood. That makes the New Testament better than the First Testament, which is the argument of the book. This kind of reason would appeal to Jewish readers, for they emphasize strongly the solidarity of the Jewish race. The whole Jewish law and its ordinances and priesthood is regarded as potentially where it began all with Abraham. So their mindset was one that you could talk to this way. Translation. And so to speak, by the intermediate agency of Abraham, also Levi, who receives tithes, paid tithes. Yet in the loins of his father, he was when Melchizedek met him. Page 76. is a high priest of the testament that offers sacrifice that put away sin. The Messiah is. The first testament neither offered nor made anything complete. Verse 11. The word perfection is the translation of teleosis, which signifies the act or process of consummating. It speaks of completeness. An institution is perfect or complete when it affects the purpose for which it was instituted, and produces a result that corresponds to the idea of it. The purpose of the priesthood was to remove the obstacles, sin, which kept man from God, and make a way of access for man to God. The Levitical priesthood could do that in a typical but not in an actual way. The sins were only what? Covered. They were not removed. The priesthood and the sacrifice were an index finger pointing to the Messiah and his substitutionary death on the cross. Because the Levitical sacrifice and priesthood could not actually provide a salvation for sinful man, it follows that a new priesthood must be instituted that would. You think they would figure that out, right? That all the offerings they're making really doesn't take away sin. Unless they got to believe that about themselves, which some people do.
So that's why they had to make the sacrifices over and over.
Repeated redundancy. And because the salvation needed to be provided, a new priesthood was brought in, and a new priest, Messiah, a priest after the order of Melchizedek. The word another is the translation of heteros, meaning of another kind. That's very important. That is, since the Levitical priesthood brought nothing to completion, not merely another priest was needed, but another priest of a different kind. It could not be another priest in the line of Aaron, but one of a different order of priesthood. That is the argument of the writer. Since there was a need for a priesthood of a different order than Aaron, it follows that a new order of priesthood has arisen, that of Melchizedek. The writers prove this proposition again, namely that the New Testament is superior to and takes the place of the First Testament. There was a need for a different testament since the first one could not offer a sacrifice that paid for sin. You'd think they would have figured that out. The Pharisees couldn't figure that out. The disciples had a hard time receiving that. See, the temple and the sacrifices had become an idol in itself. Translation: if indeed, therefore, completeness were through the Levitical priesthood, for the people on the basis of it had the law laid down to them, what need after that should there be a priest of a different kind, arising according to the order of Melchizedek, and not being called after the order of Aaron? In other words, if the Levitical priesthood and the system worked, it would not have to be replaced. But since it didn't work, and could not work, the whole system is thrown what? Away. And a new system is put in place. And we'll pick up here after the break. Do you pause that, Shane, when you do
Yes,
that, or you just hit it on?
Yes,